I'm Francesca Romana Forlini, and I'd like to introduce you my thesis, Field of Objects, the Preservation of the Domestic Condition, as a Master of Design student in Critical Conservation at Harvard Graduate School of Design. I would like to start by mentioning that throughout my research period, I've been influenced by a renowned quote of architect Ernesto Nathan Rogers on the architect's interest, from the spoon to the town, that summarizes a typical Italian attitude towards design that not only recalls Aldo Rossi's coffee pot, La Cupola, but relates also to what Leon Battista Alberti wrote in the 15th century. The city is like a big house, and a house, in turn, a small city. These examples open up a particular scale-less approach to design, thanks to which each category of my analysis, from the smallest, as the object, to the largest, the landscape, have not been considered as enclosed entities, but rather as a set of interconnected and interchangeable dimensions. Thus, through my research, I tried to recover the cultural dimension of domestic interiors for a speculative reformulation of the concept of heritage that includes the everyday life. This has been possible thanks to the proposed blurred limit between objects, furniture, architecture, and the city. That allowed me to introduce the imaginary landscape of the interiors, in which it is possible to analyze the topography of domesticity and the value of monumental pieces of furniture as true fragments of cultural heritage. In fact, the potentially endless landscape of housing interiors hosts from the smallest particle of dust that settles over the pieces of furniture to the limitless number of fragments, both real and imaginary, that inhabit the interior. It also extends to the larger scale of freestanding containers, such as drawers or architecture, up to built and unbuilt fields. My thesis wants therefore to probe the fundamental contribution of domestic objects in order to redefine in a much more comprehensive and rich manner the notion of cultural heritage. This led to further considerations on the preservation of the domestic condition, that I think being crucial for the assessment on the demolition or conservation of certain housing estates. My focus is Paris, where the state has repeatedly asserted a national cultural identity through the vehicle of architecture. My particular interest has been the evolution of the French middle-class apartment as a record of aspiration. By assembling images of middle-class housing and the accompanying domestic objects, furniture and fittings, I tackled the conflict between the planning of the modern apartment in the French modernist housing estates, the so-called grands ensembles, and the traditional space conception of the bourgeois family. To sum up, this research firstly led to define the role that objects play in the domestic space, the individual and family's identity, and secondly, the discrepancy between the envisioned spaces of modernism and their contemporary condition of inhabitation. The phenomenon of the colonization of modernist interior spaces is endlessly repeated as residents attempt to express their good taste, representing the French science of the savoir-vivre, in order to achieve an elusive ideal of luxury. Thirdly, this idea of luxury has been analyzed, together with its relationship with real estate and the provocative meaning given to it by French architects Truot, Lacaton, and Vassal, through the renovation project of the modernist building Tourbois-le-Prêtre in Paris, the one shown in this picture. Fourthly, these considerations have been repositioned within the context of social housing projects in France, and it will be questioned whether they are worth being preserved or not. Each of the 4 chapters of my thesis is based on a dichotomy of concepts, which frictions framed my analysis. The first chapter focuses on texts and history. Since the 19th century is the starting point of the research, the bourgeois apartment has been analyzed through the lenses of major French treatises on domestic architecture, interior distribution, and the bed, introducing the semantic role attributed to the system of objects. The second chapter is devoted to a man and the landscape, the less spoken reality of Le Corbusier as a 19th century man has been taken into consideration, together with his personal objects and interiors. Moreover, his own production reveals a continuous dialectic between vernacular, domesticated objects and industrially produced types, which is followed by considerations over the interior landscape of the house. This chapter allowed me to jump from more precise focus on product design to the imaginary dimension of interiors as framed by Gaston Bachelard's Poetics of Space. Once explored the powerful tools of miniaturization and magnification, I could delve into the relationship between Rossi's cities of broken architectures and lost memories, in parallel to Le Corbusier's interior landscapes. The third chapter, instead, delves into the topic of modernization in France and implementation of grands ensembles. The chapter focuses on standardization and taste. Domestic objects have been analyzed through the lenses of consumption theories, tackling in parallel the question of kitsch. This chapter discloses the very profound relationship between goods and the formation of identity and culture. The fourth conclusive chapter is devoted to the architectural case study of Tourbois-le-Pretre that is accompanied by some theoretical considerations. This chapter draws on the three preceding ones, synthesizing the entire problematic and defining the critical points of the research. Although the chapters are here arranged chronologically, each of them has to be seen as an isolated entity. Each time frame stands on its own because it remains faithful to the first important findings of this thesis. The time of interiors moves at a different pace to everything else. Instead of proceeding along an historical timeline, it remains steady, or better, it replicates itself within tradition, permanence of a certain social structure. In the meanwhile, it is embedded in culture and thus is widely accepted, becoming part and parcel of what we consider the average, the banal, the ordinary.